Hi, and welcome to the New Property Show. My name is Steve McManaman. In this show, we'll be hearing from Sidish in regards to construction, finance and tips on savings. We'll also be joined by Anmol to speak to us about our broker segment. We'll be talking to Gary Brown about wealth creation. We'll be hearing more about engaging builders from our panel. But first, inflation versus the cash rate.
The Reserve Bank of Australia has increased the cash rate 7 times in the last 7 months to a rate of 2.85%. To understand the economics behind it, the RBA is using the cash rate as a part of its monetary policy to battle inflation. Increasing the cash rate will increase the lending interest rate. Increasing the lending interest rate means people will need to spend more on their monthly repayments. Increasing the monthly repayments means people will have less money on hand. As a result, people will spend less on day-to-day items. This will reduce the demand and in return it will reduce the prices. Although currently, inflation is caused by 2 main things: the cost of fuel due to the war in the Ukraine and the residual supply chain issues stemming from the pandemic. This means current rate increase may or may not have a direct impact on inflation, which the RBA will constantly monitor.
I'm joined here by Sidish here. They're trying to obviously slow down inflation.
Yep.
There's some other things that we can do, which is, something you specialise, which is really just tips on saving.
Yep.
What would you say to the average household now, how they can actually control their spending, both fixed expenses and variable expenses? What would you suggest? Yeah.
In an economy like this, it's very important a standard household actually spend a little bit more time trying to create a savings plan. The best place to start this is actually through a budget, but not through a traditional budget. We normally suggest our customers to do a budget where they focus on their fixed rate expenses and variable cost expenses. Your fixed cost expenses are the ones that happens regularly. Mm-hmm. So this could be your mortgage, this could be your rates, this could be your rego, so forth, right? The best way to manage this is always look for the market to find providers where they will provide alternative options. Mm-hmm. And also find solutions where you may be able to make your payments without too much stress on your monthly cash flow. So for example, your rego, instead of paying annually, maybe talk to the Vic Roads and see if you could pay that quarterly, because in that way it will have less stress on your cash flow. Your variable expenses are the ones that directly related to your lifestyle. So this might be your gym membership, mm-hmm. eating out, and also like your subscription with Netflix, Spotify, so forth, right? Maybe try a day in your calendar where you will eat at home rather than going out. So that would be a method.
More date nights, for
example. More date nights at home, you know what I mean? So that will allow you to save a little bit more money on your monthly budget.
Basically, people are still in control of their spending.
Yep.
And obviously we've got some fixed expenses, but what we need to look at is the variables, so the subscriptions, pulling down on those things that are negotiable. So with that said though, let's work into the building industry. So is that affecting anything? So obviously what I've seen in the market, land prices are going up, cost of buildings going up. Have you got things like valuation shortfalls? What would you suggest in terms of construction finance, and what do we need to look at there?
Absolutely. Good question, Steve.
Yeah.
So we see 2 major challenges in the construction lending. Number one is what you just mentioned, valuation shortfalls, right? The best way to manage this is whenever you're signing up a land and a building contract, always make sure you do that subject to finance. Also make sure your building contract is a fixed price contract. And most importantly, have some savings for a rainy day, right? Another big problem we see at the moment is the time frames that it takes to complete a property. If you are a first home owner buyer, you might be paying your rent, the loan on your land, as well as interest on your progress payments. If you are an investor, you will be paying your land loan and interest on your progress payments until you get some rent. So it's very important to have some savings to actually face these unforeseeable circumstances.
What would you normally recommend in terms of savings put aside? I've suggested to clients in the past to at least have a buffer of up to $10,000 for repayment, so just have that in a separate account. Do you think that's a fair amount nowadays? Or?
Absolutely. Yeah. But also what I tell a lot of people is make it a percentage of your cost. Mm-hmm. So if you could get at least about 5%, of your construction or the land and the whole cost as a savings buffer, that would be a really good amount to work with. Because we are in an economy, we don't know where we're going to go ahead with the interest rates. So ANZ and Westpac saying interest rate would be 1% higher. So it's better to have some savings buffer in order to actually face these circumstances.
There is a few new schemes that are out though too. So for example, you've got first home buyers grants, you've got low deposit schemes. Do you want to just quickly rattle off what some of those schemes might be, so that people can actually research those to see if there's other incentives out there that can help them get into the market earlier?
Yeah. So there are a number of opportunities and actually benefits given by the government in order to help and boost the market, as well as help these first home owner buyers, right? My best suggestion here is work with your bank or the broker to find what works best for you. Also, there are lenders who provide benefits to the first home owner buyers. For example, Bank of Melbourne, they're doing 85% without LMI if it's your first property. So there are a lot of options. So it's very important you talk to your broker or your banker and finding the best solution that works for you.
Banks have been a little bit more lenient and flexible there in terms of the lender's mortgage insurance.
Yep.
That's just quite a significant saving, just let alone. That could be $5,000 to $10,000. Last thing, I guess you've been in broking now for a while. Pre-approval, is that still relevant nowadays, or
absolutely?
What would you suggest? Yeah.
It depending on the bank. So this is where you really need to use the services of a broker. Depending on the bank, the pre-approval conditions are different. For example, Commonwealth Bank, they will honor their pre-approvals for 90 days. So that's something where we are actually using to help our clients. But then some banks don't honor their pre-approvals. So before you do a pre-approval, it's very important you have a conversation with your broker to find out if you purchase within the approval, will they still honor my approval?
Beautiful, great tips. Thank you for joining us with the market segment. Look forward to having you on as a guest again shortly. Thanks, Adish.
Thanks, Steve.
I'm joined here with Anmol from Win Financial. Thank you for coming on the New Property Show. Who you are, how long you've been in broking, and you've got a bit of a story around building yourself.
Thanks for having me, Steve. I've been broking for just over 2 years. Been running my own brokerage for 1 year. Worked as a mentee under someone for a year. That was a great experience. You've asked me about my experience in building. I've had that experience twice now. How it started, I bought the land from the developer directly. Went and shopped for the builders. What I wanted was a turnkey project for my investment, where everything's covered because the land was far off and I couldn't be bothered going and shopping for the tradies locally. So I wanted the builder to include everything. Luckily I found the builder. Challenges, yes, it was challenging because different builders have different pricing, different builders would do things differently. The best thing, everything was covered in my contract. It's at lock-up stage now. I know when the house is finished, I can straight away give it out for renting.
And so with that said, is your builder in contact with you regularly? How do they communicate? Is that email, phone call, WhatsApp? What are they doing?
There's an email once a month to let me know how the progress is. They keep sending me photos. I'm in direct contact with the site supervisor, which is handy.
Yep.
He lets me know how's the house going, when can I come meet him and see the house.
I think that's the most exciting part really, is just catching up with the site supervisor, getting the walkthrough, seeing the progress, and of course you're going to stalk it anyway. I want to talk to you today about, I guess, your experience with construction loans versus established loans. So there's been a bit of a shift in the market. Are you still seeing a lot of construction loans coming through, or are people sort of swaying towards established at the moment?
Look, it's 50-50. A lot of people still want to construct. They want to see their house getting built. With supply issues, I know the industry has been impacted heaps, but still people are very motivated to build their own homes.
I think once you go through the process, the reward is does take time, but you get to create it, I guess, from the ground up. With that said, like, what are you doing in terms of screening a client nowadays? Like, I'm not always one for pre-approval. I'm like, let's go all in. You're about pre-approval. What's your thoughts?
I would suggest my clients to get pre-approval before they even see the builder, because they need to know how much they can spend. The other thing I tell my clients to have spare cash in their pockets, because they'll be paying rent on one side and paying the mortgage repayments on the other. A lot of first home buyers get that shock because they're paying about $2,000 a month in rent and the mortgage starts as well, and there's an effect in the cash flow. So it's important to adjust your lifestyle to manage those 9-10 months. It's taking longer than 10 months sometimes, so it's important to let them know how much they need to be saving.
Okay, and what about investing nowadays? So you're still seeing people buying house and land in Melbourne, or are they moving up to Queensland or South Australia? Have we still got investors in the market?
Depends on, again, how much they can borrow. Somebody with a budget of not as high are looking at other places. Adelaide and Queensland being very competitive these days with high rental returns. A lot of people I see are moving in those areas, getting in touch with people who specialize in finding properties there for them and locking in the properties. A lot of people are expecting properties to come back in the market because somebody booked the land 10 months ago. They could afford back then, but they can't afford that now. So these guys who have cash in hand can go out there and buy those properties cheap.
Beautiful. So the money's in the land and securing the money's made when you buy, not when you sell. So Anwar, I want to thank you so much for joining us on the New Property Show. You've been a pleasure to have on as a guest.
Thanks for having me, Steve. Lovely to be here. Thank you.
Welcome back, and I'm joined by Gary Brown here. Gary, we're going to talk about wealth creation today, but before we begin, mate, you've had an incredible success story in such a short time. You're only, 30 years of age, is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
What have you achieved in that time?
So, with help of my lovely wife, we've been able to build an accounting firm from 0 to 3 million revenue, team of 30, 35 people, and a couple other businesses. And at the same time, we've been able to build a property portfolio of 8 million with 12 properties.
Mate, fantastic result. I did question your age. It's only 30. I guess my next question would be, by 35, what does that look like for you?
Yeah, good question. So we have a couple big projects on now. So we've moved away from the properties less than $1 million, and we're moving into the properties over $1 million. So we're working on a couple of those deals at the moment, and we're going to continue to invest in the property market. When there's this amount of fear at the moment in the market, it's a perfect opportunity to jump in, and that's what we're taking advantage of.
I think that's where the good deals are. So Gary, I'd like to investigate further cash flow positive properties. I'm going to give you a couple of hypotheticals. I'd like you to share with our viewing audience what a cash flow positive does, how it performs, and I guess this versus the capital growth, which we'll investigate shortly. So let's say, for example, we've bought a property for $750,000, including stamp duty, settlement costs, everything's included. With that said, and hypothetically the property's in Werribee, which is in West Melbourne, what do we look at from there?
Yeah, fantastic. So what we're going to look at is the rental income above the expenses? And for it to be a cash flow positive property, we want to see that. And in this case, we can assume that it would be. And if we look at a property over a 2, 3, 5 year period and upwards of 10 years, that's what we want to be measuring for these cash flow positive properties. We want to be taking the cash that we generate from the properties, putting it into our offset account, paying down the loan, looking at some form of cash savings, to then look at investing that in other investments later, or maybe even just taking it towards and putting it off your actual home loan that you live in. So when we do this, we want to compound the growth of that high cash yielding property and make sure that we're able to leverage off that in the future.
So really the properties are going to pay for themselves, take a lot of pressure, whether you're working or not working, off the purchaser, and ultimately you want to increase the rent over time as well, I'd assume. I think we're going to work with a number around about $950 per week.
Yep.
As a rental analysis. What I'd like to do is, divulge and go a little bit further into this over 10 years, and we're going to weigh this up now, versus a capital growth property. So with that said, if we bought a capital growth property for the same amount, $750,000, it's in Werribee, we're ready, we're settled, ready to go, we've got a little bit more of a higher income behind us, why would we buy a capital growth property, and what's that going to look like in 10 years?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. One thing I've noticed with the accounting firm and all the different clients we've had is that when personal circumstances come into it and you're using a negative gearing property, you might have to touch into your wages that you earn. You might have to rely on other income sources. And with the cash flow positive properties, you don't have to. So with our portfolio and how we built it, we don't want to be forced into selling a property at the worst time. We want to be able to make the decisions of when it's the right time to sell it and to sell it at that point. So with this type of property, we want to go compounding the rent, look at it every year increasing by 3%, look at the expenses every year, they increase by 3%, but the interest wouldn't in a cash flow positive property. It'd be paying down the loan. So after a 10-year period, on the example that we have up on the board, we'd be looking at a $550,000 estimated net position off a $750,000 purchase, which is pretty amazing when you consider the amount of money per year that could equate to.
So I guess we'll have a debate later, but if you have the money behind you, maybe capital growth property because you're getting potential, end of the day you're creating equity. If you're looking for retirement, this would be my interpretation, then cash flow is going to be king. I'd like to, as I said, right now, we're going to look at the numbers, we're going to share that up on the screen, we're going to go through it and we'll see who comes out the winner.
Absolutely.
Fantastic, and thank you so much for joining us on the New Property Show. Look forward to having you on the show again, and congratulations on your success with the accounting firm and what you're doing for, I guess, Australians and obviously Melburnians. Look forward to seeing your firm expanding and, I know, investigating your knowledge a little bit further. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve.
Tonight's question that's been put forward by one of our audience members was, why buy a brand new home over an existing one? I'm going to throw that out there and see who wants to lead with the answer.
I'll start. So basically, I built my own house as a land and construction. I feel like buying a land would be a cheaper option for first home buyer because you pay, not for the first home buyer, but first home buyer can buy a house without paying a stamp duty. But if someone is going to buy an investment property, it would be easier to buy a land because you pay half the stamp duty and you can go up to $650, $700 purchase price. So in normal circumstances, you would have paid $35,000 stamp duty if you buy a house worth $700. But if you do a land and construction, you would be paying only $17,000, $18,000.
Especially to a little bit less if you've got a first home buyer's grant, that'd be a zero first home buyer grant, correct? You pay zero in stamp duty.
So with the first home buyer, there is no stamp duty, but you also get $10,000 to support you for your first home.
So much benefits of buying a new home. You can choose your own destiny, I suppose. You can choose the layout, you can choose how the kitchen looks, the bathrooms, where to put the mirrors. A lot of benefits in that.
Perfect. And yourself, Kerry?
I would say, especially if you're buying as an investment property, there is so much depreciation over buying an existing property.
What do you think?
Well, we're on the New Property Show, so I feel like I'm just going to throw it out there and mix it up a little bit. For me, it's about where you're at personally and what you're trying to achieve. But if we're talking investors, absolutely, new homes have the benefit of having more rent appeal, depreciation benefits. But when it comes to being your home, it's exactly as you guys said, so the ability to make it your own.
Okay, and what are your thoughts on, I guess versus established areas? Looking at new properties, you've got infrastructure, you've got community benefits. Also, too, I like being surrounded personally by, I guess, a whole heap of brand new neighbours. We actually get to pretty well choose your neighbours. You can have your friends move in. Have you guys ever built a new home?
I have done that. So the only reason I moved to West because my friends were living in the same estate, and I had the opportunity to stay with them for the first 12 months before I can move back to Hawthorne. So you're right, you get the benefit that you can stay with your friends in the West, where the community is still building, and then you can move back. Whereas in the existing house, you don't know who would be your neighbors, and I feel like the maintenance cost would be much higher compared to the new house.
Okay, so maintenance costs. So there's some other benefits like builder's warranty and that as well.
And taxes.
So talk to me about that. So have you had any issues, maybe Rex, being both a lawyer and conveyancer as well? There'd be some substantial benefits with building a new home because with an old property sometimes can come with existing problems. So pros and cons on that.
We see both sides. So we see properties, new builds that go wrong. We're going to end up in VCAT for a few years with experts and stuff, and we see it with existing properties that you have disputes with previous vendors not disclosing stuff. So we see it from both ends. There's no real benefit either way. The advantage, I suppose, would be for new homes because you do have builder's warranty.
Perfect. And Rebecca, so what are some of the challenges that you've seen on site with building a new home. So we are fighting for the new home. It is a
Yep.
new property show.
Yep.
But what are some of the things that can go wrong that you've, I guess, experienced?
I think there's so much in property that can go wrong, and you can equip yourself and jump on the forums and try and get across the common issues, but in reality every build is different, so you come across different hurdles. So the biggest thing is just being clear on what you're wanting, finding the ideal fit builder, just being super clear on what you're getting yourself into, and then you can avoid a big majority of that.
Okay.
A big part of that, I think, is the contract. You've got to make sure the specifications specified in your contract is how you wanted it, not pursuant to some marketing material, but it needs to be specified.
I think the other thing that I guess no one really ever talks about is how it makes you feel. I guess buying an established property, I guess for homes, it's a great feeling to own your own home, and sometimes that can be established. But the satisfaction of actually turning up at site and watching your property come out of the ground and having the communication with the back end, the site supervisors, knowing that you've created something, I guess, from an idea. I personally would stalk my place every day.
Oh, you're that guy?
I drive past it every single day. Now, nowadays, I guess we're building outside of states. So maybe let's talk about building a new home as an investment. We're going to go outside of Victoria. It doesn't matter. We're going to throw the wheel out there. We'll call it Queensland or Perth. What would you do then? In that case, would you still buy or build a brand new home in an outside state? Which way would you lean then? Would that
Look,
change
it's a
your
new
answer?
property show, so
Yeah.
I would say build a new one. Again, same benefits. You get better tax depreciation on the whole house. You get to choose how to build it and how the looks and feels. So there's a lot of extra benefits for building a new house.
Perfect. And what about you, Kerry? What's your thoughts?
Well, I think my opinion on that is that you just need to make sure that you are doing it with the right company, that you know the company, you know the background, you make sure that they have a good reputation, you get guided by experts to help you.
Okay, the other thing too, I guess I'm thinking about too, is what you can do is you don't always have to go towards a new property. So I would always recommend to people is look at what's called the medium house value. Now, obviously, that hasn't caught up to new property now because new property prices have gone up. But I do always recommend that people just do a comparison with an established property versus a new property in an area. But then you need to weigh up the pros and cons of that. How much time have you spent, I guess, online looking and researching? Do you guys play around on realestate.com or the Homeleys or Domains? Do you still actively look for property yourself, even if you're not in the market?
Yeah, I'm guilty of that. Like I check real estate every day because like I'm really aggressive investor. And the way I see it is like if I'm going to spend, like let's say $1 million, what am I getting in $1 million? Is it like a bigger land size with an old house, which I can renovate it over a period of 3 years or 5 years and redevelop it, like subdivide it in the future? Or I buy something for $1 million now with a 300 land size with a new house. So my recommendation is to buy a new house because then you're not spending so much on the renovations and stuff, and then it's easier to rent it out. You get more rental income out of it. The tenants are easygoing because they're seeing everything new and they're not going to complain again and again about things.
Okay, last question. How would you save money if you were building a new property? What's a couple of tips that you do to save money? Where do you think the money's made? I think I've got my answer. But how would you save money?
You save money in so many ways. You save money straight away from the acquisition time. You save money by stamp duty. You're paying less stamp duty. The moment you do settle, you save money on depreciation. Your tax is going to be less. You also get a planning. So new property takes a while to build. So you're planning and saving along the way as well.
What about you, Kerry? What do you think?
Yeah, look, I think it's pretty clear in the time that I've been mortgage broking that most people they're saving from as you said, the day they sign that contract. In a lot of cases, there's clear evidence that there's just not enough land, right? So the demand there just keeps pushing the land prices up.